Wow, those are some fights, huh? O'Malley gets the dominant victory, allowing him to go back to his chair in the corner of the bedroom with a smile on his face. Poirier beat the washed allegations, KOing BSD at the exact same time in the fight as he KO'd Conor McGregor, plus much, much more. I think we can all agree all the way from the early prelims to the main event, UFC 299 absolutely delivered. It definitely gave UFC 300 some big expectations to live up to, though maybe we'll be starved by all these awful Apex events that no matter how mid UFC 300 is, if it is mid for some reason, we'll probably enjoy it anyways after the slop we're gonna have to get through to get there. But I mean, I guess either way, they already are fumbling UFC 300 by putting Bo Nickel on the main card over Charles Oliveira. No reason for him to be anything other than the prelim opener. He doesn't deserve to be above anyone on that card, not even the WMMA fights, but that's a whole other rant. So let's talk about this card and what are some of the interesting matchups we could see after this card. First up with the early prelims, we saw some crazy finishes here from Robelis Despaigne and Micheal. A lot of MMA YouTubers were really counting out the latter, but he showed them for sure. The main matchup I want to talk about here, though, is Despaigne's next opponent. Look, I get we are tired of these heavyweights coming in and immediately getting ranked opponents, but I think we can make an exception here. Look, he's clearly technically terrible, slipping and sliding all over the place, but I think he could do well in the number 10 to number 15 area, just crushing fat, sloppy heavyweights, though he'd get worked by most of the top guys. Almeida, for example, would absolutely ragdoll him. I think he should face the loser of Tiavasa Tabura. Whoever loses is going to be nearing the edge of the rankings, and fighting next week should allow for similar turnaround times. Just please don't make this fight an Apex main event, but it would probably still end in a fun knockout, then just let Despaigne KO fat heavyweights on the edge of the rankings. He's probably going to be too old to get a good enough skill set to make it to the top of the division before his age catches up to him. Let's just focus on getting the bag with some performance of the night bonuses and fun highlights. Let him say boring Apex cards by just throwing him on the featured fight every few months. On to the prelims. These were definitely a step down from the early prelims, though Phillips and Pedro Munhoz put on a really fun fight, even if it was pretty one-sided. Sad to say, Munhoz will probably drop out of the rankings. I think we could maybe do Phillips versus Rob Font. Similar matchup in this new flashy upcoming guy versus crafty vet. Plus, Font is coming off of 2 losses, being 1-4 in his last 5, though a more exciting matchup could be Phillips versus Song Yadong. There could be some beef there since Song Yadong did previously lose to Phillips, and turnaround time should be able to line up well since they fought on the same card in comparison to Rob Font, who's probably going to be looking to come back a lot sooner since he fought quite a few months ago at this point. I'll talk more about Gamrot in a bit since there's a fighter a bit higher up on the card I'd like to place him against. Plus, I don't want to talk about him at all with how much Vistuzzer he put on, let's be honest. Since Dana decided to put Grasso and Shevchenko as the coaches for TUF this year, women's flyweight is going to be log-jammed, so probably give Maycee Barber the loser of Blanchfield-Farrat to keep that division busy while we wait for that fight, which most likely isn't going to happen until September at the Sphere. Meanwhile, the winner of Blanchfield-Farrat will just have to sit out and wait for her title shot. Now, let's all say thank you to Curtis Blaydes for being an absolute chad and avenging our boy Derek Lewis, knocking out Jailton Almeida and saving us from an extra 10 minutes of complete and utter boredom. I think the obvious fight here would be a rematch with Tom Aspinall for Curtis Blaydes, since of course the first fight did end in a weird fluke. It'll be good to run this one back, plus it'll help keep Aspinall busy while Jones continues to duck him. Plus, it'll likely be the fight that Aspinall will win, which is preferable. It would be pretty unfair to become interim champ and not get a title fight due to being forced to defend it and losing. Since yes, Curtis Blaydes did show some solid defense here, he looked as plotty as ever on the feet and will probably get slept by Aspinall with how unbelievably fast and smooth he is for a heavyweight. Make this the main event of UFC Manchester in the summer, which I believe is a fight night, and so, we again saw Grasso versus Shevchenko, that headline a fight night, so I think you can probably make an interim championship defense on a fight night, and chances are the arena is still going to sell out because Tommy is going to be a big star over there in the UK. Now finally, onto the main card, opening with Petr Yan beating the PFL allegations and getting the decision over Song Yadong. Very happy to see the result of this fight, showing that Yan isn't completely washed. Even if it wasn't his best performance ever, I think we're all happy to see that, especially coming after the total domination from Marab and robbery decision from O'Malley. But that's the fight's result itself, but like Gamrot, there's someone higher up on the card I'd like for him to face next, so on to the next fight. Now, this one was pretty sad to me at least. Gilbert Burns was doing so good before he got caught with that knee. Hurts to see him get brutalized like that, especially with that really late stoppage. That's going to do some permanent damage to him considering his age. But good on JDM and respect to him. He's got some big balls calling out Shavkat Rakhmonov. There's absolutely an argument that Shavkat deserves a title shot next instead, but with how inactive Leon is, maybe not a bad fight to make in the meantime, especially because Bilal remembered the decision. Muhammad deserves the next title shot more than Shavkat, as unfortunate as that may be, because man, Leon versus Bilal has the potential to be the worst fight in UFC history, but that's getting sidetracked. JDM versus Shavkat, let's book it. If the UFC is going back to Australia in September, maybe make that the featured fight or co-main event on that pay-per-view. Although that's a long time out for Shavkat, I think it would be a fun fight, assuming Shavkat doesn't stink it up into a clinch fest like he did against Wonderboy. Shavkat, of course, has the potential to have great fights with boxers, as we saw with Geoff Neal, but let's hope it would go more like that and less like the Wonderboy fight. Who would win that, though? I think I would probably have to lean Shavkat. I think he would still get JDM to the ground and submit him. On to the next fight, though, MVP versus Kevin Holland. Pretty embarrassing performance from Kevin Holland, where he once again decided as soon as he was losing to mess around and that he didn't care anymore about the fight, just straight up coping, which makes it impossible to ever pick Kevin Holland just because he has such an absolutely horrible mindset. He doesn't try and catch up in fights, he just gives up. But Holland, like Munhoz, is probably going to have to fight someone unranked before getting a shot back in at the rankings against a ranked opponent, because I imagine they will fall out of the rankings here on Tuesday. MVP, though, yes, I can mock Holland, but I also can't deny that he didn't have a very impressive performance. Does he get ragdolled by Shavkat? Absolutely so. Probably similar to a Michael Chandler situation where let's just focus on making fun matchup with this guy. Chances are he's a little bit too old to actually get the belt. I know some people have been saying Ian Gary, but he shouldn't be fighting down the rankings in my opinion in references to Gary. I think the UFC should book the Colby Covington fight that Ian Gary's called for, but for MVP instead, I think the obvious pick would be a fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Both older guys who are fun, flashy strikers. Does it have potential to turn into point fighting at range? Possibly, but I think it also has potential to be a very fun fight, with a bunch of course, flashy, fun striking. Maybe the co-main event of the Manchester Fight Night that's supposed to happen this summer with Aspinall and Blaydes headlining. Now onto the banger co-main event, Dustin Poirier versus Benoit Saint Denis. A great fight. BSD, despite gassing early and getting KO'd early, still proved he belonged to the type of the lightweight division by taking the first round off of Poirier and being on his way to taking the second round as well prior to the knockout. It definitely exposed a hole in BSD's game, though, and that's his defense. He was incredibly slow on the feet and was getting hard hit by everything Dustin threw. He seemed to just rely on his chin against some of these lower level guys, but obviously that didn't work out against someone as high level as Dustin Poirier. Now, okay, sure, we can all cope that BSD fought with staff or whatever, but still, either way, he wasn't going to be getting a title shot off of this if he won. It's just kind of unfortunate that now someone like Paddy Pimblett's going to have one of that longest win streaks, that lightweight, since BSD's, of course, no longer on a win streak. Lightweight is too log-jammed at the top with guys who deserve a title shot more anyways, so yeah, that's why BSD wasn't going to be getting a title shot off this. That'll, of course, only be made worse if Poirier also chooses to move up, so who should each of these guys fight next? Well, does BSD have to defend his rank now? I don't think so. Regardless of the potential he fought compromised, he was still doing very well against Poirier, and I think he'd still have success against other top lightweights. It's fair to say, you know, if he really did have staff, maybe he wouldn't have gassed out as easily if he didn't have staff, and then would have not been finished in the same way by being so slow on the feet. Or maybe he wasn't compromised and Poirier just really exposed his stand-up. Either way, I think they simply rushed BSD to the top too fast. Give BSD someone in the number 5 to 10 range. I think fellow lightweight who fought on this card, Mateusz Gamrot, could be a good matchup. BSD would likely be able to neutralize a lot of the grappling, preventing Gamrot from putting on another boring fight like he did at 299, but clearly BSD is still not the best on the feet, with Gamrot not being special on the feet either, getting dropped by Ancient RDA in round 1. I think it should even out. Yes, you can argue Gamrot also deserves to fight up the rankings, but again, there's such a logjam at the top of lightweight, he's not going to have much of a choice. Maybe book this fight as the co-main event to the next UFC Paris, assuming something like Gane versus Pavlovich is the headliner. I think the Diamond should take on the loser of Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan. Since Dustin Poirier has already fought down the rankings, he's earned a spot here against another top contender. But he also obviously doesn't deserve a title shot, so fighting the loser of that fight while the other goes to fight Makhachev, or he waits for Gaethje or Holloway to fight him, I'd rather see him fight the loser of this matchup over the loser of Gaethje versus Holloway, since it has potential to not be a rematch if Charles is victorious, which would be preferable, not having so many rematches, because pretty much every other choice is going to be a rematch. Plus, Dustin and Arman would be a banger fight in my opinion. It would be a lot more competitive than a Charles or Gaethje rematch, and definitely a lot more competitive than if we were to fight Makhachev. DP was getting ragdolled by BSD, so it'd be scary to see what Makhachev would have done to him if, say, he took on that fight on short notice instead of Volkanovski back in October. Plus, let's be honest, Dustin Poirier's best shot at pulling guillotines another 25 times will probably be against Arman, who's yet to submit someone in the UFC, compared to the most dangerous submission artist in the sport in Charles Oliveira, who previously submitted him. Maybe regardless of if Arman beats Charles, do DP versus Arman while Gaethje or Holloway fight Makhachev. I think that could actually be a smart idea. I know it's a little bit unfair for Arman. Beating Charles and not getting the title shot next. Look, Poirier, that's still going to be a big fight for him. That's not a bad name for him to try and get on his legacy, and it keeps him busy if we see, say, Gaethje fight Makhachev next. Now, onto our main event. The results of the fight didn't really surprise me. I was thinking O'Malley would get the decision, though it was a lot more action-packed than I thought, so respect to both fighters. At least to O'Malley in the cage. Can't say I fully respect a dude who likes watching his wife in bed from the corner of the room. Now, with how durable Vera is, combined with O'Malley getting tired in the Jan fight, I was expecting this to kind of be an Izzy versus Cannonier, or even worse, an Izzy versus Romero type situation, but it ended up being a pretty great fight despite being very one-sided. I know Cheetah is durable, but wow, he took so many flush shots and survived. Crazy. It was actually kind of similar to the Munhoz versus Phillips fight lower down on the card. Probably a better fight than Volkanovski versus Poirier, though I'd say it didn't surpass Strickland versus DDP. Now, who should both these guys face next? Sean O'Malley called out Ilia Topuria. Look, as much as I'd love to see O'Malley out cold on the canvas, I don't think this is the fight to make. I know Joe Rogan was going on about how big that fight be and how you would fly to Spain to see it. I can't say I disagree that this wouldn't be a big fight, but it's not deserved for either fighter. Evelev, Holloway, Ortega, and Volkov, all good arguments to fight Topuria next, so let's not see featherweight get jammed up. I'd also rather not see bantamweight get all clogged up, since Merab and Sandhagen both have good arguments to fight for the title next. Not to mention both of these guys are pretty inactive, so it would make the situation even worse. Let's say the fight is made in October like Topuria wants, no bantamweight or featherweight could challenge for the title until mid-2025, which would be absolutely insane, assuming O'Malley and Topuria take their usual long recovery times. For Chito Vera, let's talk about another bantamweight lower down on the card, Petr Yan. Petr Yan versus Chito Vera is the fight to make, in my opinion. Yes, that's technically fighting down in the rankings for Yan, but he isn't going to have much choice. Merab deserves the next shot. I doubt Yan wants that rematch anyways. And Corey Sandhagen seems to be fighting Umar next. With Vera coming off of a title shot, I don't think this would be a bad fight for Yan to get back into title contention. I do think there is potential for this to be a boring fight, since they're both slow starters who like to download data before engaging more in the later rounds, but in the second and third rounds, I think we'd see some fun striking exchanges, really test Vera's defense, or maybe we'd see, one of Vera's classic crazy kick or knee to the face knockouts if Yan really is washed, though it also depends how quickly Yan wants to get back in the cage, since I imagine Vera will want quite a bit more time off. For Sean, let's not see Topuria next. I think we can all agree Merab is the next guy in line for O'Malley. Let's see that fight made. Hopefully O'Malley doesn't take forever off again, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Maybe he's gonna pop again because he's done that a couple times. Honestly, before this fight, I thought Merab would dominate O'Malley, but after this fight, I do think there's a good chance Merab gets chinned. Merab will get rounds by shooting takedown after takedown, but eventually he'll get caught and put out cold. We saw that he was getting rocked by Henry in their fight last month, though overall, I'd still lean Merab in that fight if he's able to keep O'Malley down, which I think he could, considering how he embarrassed Olympic gold medalist wrestler Henry Cejudo in the grappling department. If the UFC goes back to Boston this summer, let's see O'Malley defend his belt there, or maybe see the UFC come to Arizona. O'Malley could defend his belt at home. Comment down below what you thought of the card, and what do you think the next matchups to make are. Let's talk about it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.